Welcome to the Unit Economics Podcast. I'm Josh Stavinsky. On today's episode, I'm joined by Elliott Walker and Tim Hucklesby, co-founders of Nymzo, a modern chess brand built by two longtime brand designers who saw a massive gap in an overlooked category. We get into why they believe chess needed a contemporary, performance-driven product, how they turned what they were seeing in the market into conviction, and what it really took to manufacture a premium physical product from scratch. We also talk bootstrapping trade-offs, demand and distribution strategy, and what it looks like to build credibility in a legacy space that's deeply rooted in tradition. I really enjoyed this one, and I hope you do too. Elliott and Tim, thank you so much for joining today. If you both wouldn't mind giving a brief background on yourselves to start, that would be great.
Sure. I'm Tim Hucklesby. I'm one of the partners and founders of Nymzo. I've been living in New York for about 15 years, the period of time that I've known this guy, and have a background in branding before we did this design and branding. And we've been running Nymzo for about pretty much a year now.
Yeah,
I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm Elliott Walker. I'm the other founder of Nymzo. We actually met in graduate school in design. It was actually design entrepreneurship program at the School of Visual Arts like many, many years ago. And then, I've worked together for quite some time in a sort of a design and branding capacity. And then, I started Nymzo like a year ago. Just been working together on that for trying to build this thing for almost a year now. We're coming up on it in like a month.
Nice. Congratulations. What types of projects were you working on leading up to launching Nymzo, just for context as well?
So we still run and are active in a branding agency. It's called Otherword. We've been running it about 8 years. Tim and I, got along really well. We always knew we liked working together. After graduate school, went our separate ways, and then ended up starting the studio in like 2018, maybe. We had worked in a bunch of agencies in the city, doing a lot of brand work mostly. So when we started Otherword, we knew we really wanted to keep that the focus. So running a brand agency, very small boutique, kind of high touch projects. So like keep the small amount of projects, like just really focus and become a partner for them. But it runs the gamut. Like it's consumer brands, there's like B2B projects, there's stuff that's in the cultural and art space. There's things that are like just very like commerce driven. So we've gotten to see a lot of things. And I think even in our previous lives before running our own agency, we had the privilege of just working across a lot of different sectors, a lot of industries. And I think part of that is how we sort of had the confidence to say, maybe we want to try to launch our own thing as well.
Yeah, very cool. So tell me about the weeks or months leading up to actually launching Nymzo. Have you always been avid chess players? Talk to me about what that was like. And
I mean, as Elliott said, it's been a long time coming that we've been thinking about doing something other than our brand business. You help so many clients launch their own businesses. We've dealt with founders who are trying to like take the kernel of an idea and bring it to market. And so, Nymzo as a chess brand was, yes, we'd probably been thinking about it for, maybe 18 months before we actually launched our first product. But, the idea of doing something was long before that. The pandemic played a role in it. I think it played a role for a lot of people in getting into chess. Chess has exploded in the last period of time. There's like this cultural phenomenon, not just built out of, people playing online, but you see it in popular culture and people watching shows about chess. And I will be the first to admit I'm a pretty terrible chess player. Elliott is a much better chess player and it's not all about time in the saddle, I don't think. But anyway, we started playing, the pandemic was a great, distraction opportunity to like do something digital but social. And what we recognized as we sort of came to the tail end of the pandemic is just like, oh, great, we can actually, play in person now. And I think that was the point at which we recognized the moment wasn't really being met. This cultural moment wasn't being met by anything on the market. There was this kind of vacuum, as we saw it, for a company to come along and present stuff that really aligned with a lot of the contemporary culture that, was in everyone else's lives outside of chess. And that's really, I think, where we saw the opportunity from ourselves looking, me looking for my first, not my very, very first from back when I was a kid, but like my first contemporary chess set. I'm just like, the options are pretty lean. I mean, there must be like 20,000 options out there. So does the world really need another chess set? I think we would make a case that there is this gaping hole for a new take on it. So it really came out of that it was just like, we don't want to, we're playing this enough to justify spending more than $20 or $40 for a cheap set. But at the other end of the spectrum, you can spend a huge amount of money, and many of them are just not really designed for serious play. To people who don't play a lot of chess, it seems really ridiculous that there are all these kind of performance criteria, and the nature of how everything is constructed is really important for avid players and for people who want to play a lot. And so we kind of found this kind of gap where we thought, there's novelty chess sets that people want to buy. There's home decor that people want to have them and be beautiful, and maybe they don't ever play on them. But most people are playing on inexpensive chess sets that have really function and playability at the core. And we were just hoping to find this opportunity to kind of fuse those things of just like people who have a love for design, a love for things that are well crafted and engineered and are quality, and hopefully hit a price point where people can afford it and then make it accessible to everyone. And that's what gets us into conversations about our roadmap and where we go from here and everything.
Just to add on that real quick, the other thing that happened after, we were playing online a lot, and then we were also noticing not just the ascendance of like sort of culturally how people were getting into chess, but also here in New York, at least we had seen some in London, some in New York, where these kind of new chess clubs popping up, younger people playing, they're in bars, there's like DJs, there's like drinks, cocktails, natural wine. And it's like a way to just meet people, hang out. And, it'd be like on a random weeknight, and there's like just chess sets on every table, and they're on these little cafe tables. And going to some of those in New York, really fun. It was just a nice social interaction. And they have just that commodity plastic chess set that everyone has with the vinyl mat, and it's kind of too big for the tables. And it's like, this is the right kind of set, like a little bit weighted. It's kind of serious. It's not just like a toy set or like a board, it doesn't feel like a board game.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it just didn't feel, it felt like just this white labeled, like mass commodity, cheap product. And so I think that was the other kind of jumping off point, is like, how does it align with some of the people who we were hanging out with and seeing and playing with in the city? And now there are so many of these clubs. We've had the opportunity just by doing this to meet a lot of people who are starting these clubs all over the US and the world. And so we always kind of keep them as one kind of criteria in our mind. Like, this is kind of for people who don't just want a fancy object. They want to actually play with it, bring it out. If they spill a glass of wine on it, they're not going to be upset. But it also is like a nice object, something fun to work with.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like I'm a sucker for beautifully designed functional objects. So yeah, I'm absolutely aligned, but I'm curious because I'm always wondering, am I sort of alone in that way of thinking? Like, how did you actually go about validating that this idea would have legs in the market? Was it enough to be in person and having these conversations with the people that you were playing with at these new age clubs, or did you do any sort of other market research to sort of validate that this actually was, that there was enough of an addressable market to launch a business at the scale you're trying to do it at?
That is a great question, and I'd love to have an answer that said we did tons of market research, and we went through multiple years of. I think we're both kind of instinctive people when it comes to design, and we have ourselves enjoyed products that are of a similar kind of approach that you're talking about, highly functional, but well designed, not overly engineered, not just designed for the purpose of aesthetics, but really, really work. I think we had came at this from an attitude just like, if we want this thing, and if some of the people that we're speaking to, as in the early days, yes, there was a lot of sharing with, we've had the privilege of meeting so many great people within all kinds of different categories of work over the years, and sort of floating ideas to them is like, this is what we're kind of thinking of doing. They're just like, surely this exists already. Surely someone's already done this. And it's just like, well, apparently not. And I think, to answer your question directly, no, there was no like broad market data that we searched for. It was really just a question of just like floating among friends, really just going from a gut feeling of just like, I think this is going to work. I think people are going to want this. I think this is the thing that has been missing. And I think one sort of analogy that I'll give you is you've seen a lot of the ways that, many other sports that are couched in tradition and rigidity and, not leaving a lot of room for expression, have over the past, decades and number of years shifted away from that. I think about tennis, I think about golf, the way it's sort of gone from all whites in tennis to people wearing different colors and just all kinds of different expression. We're just like, we saw that as a real comparable to what we thought could potentially happen with chess. And again, it's that point of just like being inviting and being room to break the mold. At the moment, the way we saw it, chess was everything about it, everything about the culture was saying, come and join, come and play. And play your way and play. We've got clubs, different kinds of clubs for different kinds of people popping up all over the place. There are frenetic ones that are social. We've got ones where people are dating and meeting new people and all these things. Why do the products not reflect that? So I think it was a culmination of a broader review of contemporary culture and a little bit of just like, are we being idiots talking to, our friends?
Yeah, I think it's also like, we are, having done so much brand work and brand strategy work, positional work for some companies in market, a lot of the validation, it's not like, let's do a survey and see what do people want about this. Because we have kind of a strong conviction and perspective that with brand, when you're doing a very big brand play, you need to kind of come at them. You're not looking to say like, who should I be? What's my personality? Who am I like? You come out and have a very strong perspective, like in the same way that a human might have a perspective on like, this is who I am as a person, and that hopefully that's like there's attractive qualities to it. So I think for us, we knew we wanted that. The validation came in that if you look at this market, I think we have this lens on this stuff that's a little maybe adjacent to like a more traditional way that you might validate it through business, which is, hey, there's actually not any brands in this space that are making physical chess product. It's like commoditized. It's like really beautiful woodworked sets, or there's things that are like artist specific. Like I think of like a Man Ray chess set that's sold at MoMA Design, really beautiful, but kind of more home decor. And we just start looking at the landscape and we're going, oh my gosh, here's this big gap. And also there's just no player that really exists that has like name recognition outside of the digital platforms like chess.com, which are, they're the only real big players. So I think there's a few other smaller things, but there wasn't that much out there. Hence we thought like, here's where opportunity lies. And if we can then get the right thing, start kind of talking to our friends, thinking about like, well, then what does that lead to? What kind of a set does it need to happen? Which we've just been talking about. And I think that's kind of how we drove towards that decision. But we definitely no surveying or really like outside, just kind of like kept it pretty close and then, launched and yes, fingers crossed.
So you decide to launch. What did it look like to get the first batch of products physically in your hands, ready to then sell? I know you partnered with a couple other firms in the development process, but I'm curious, had you developed any physical products prior to this one? And what did it look like to like actually create this product?
I mean, it was an incredible experience. We talked about it already. We've helped so many other people do it just through the brand component, but actually doing it ourselves and having our kind of vision realized from early sketches and, mucking around in 3D programs, trying to figure out just like, what could it be? What's the sort of unique quality of ours? What are the sort of innovations that we can really think about that we've sort of learned from these sets that we're dissatisfied with? It was a long road, it was a long process. We were lucky enough to find a path that I'm very happy we have done. I mean, we partnered, with Facility, with Michael Bambino, an industrial designer, more by virtue of doing a work swap. We did a brand for his agency a while back, and it was kind of like one of these days we're going to want to do a product. And I don't think he quite recognized that it was going to be as irritating and complex as a chess set. I was just like, well, it's a physical product. Like, how hard could it be? And I think we learned in the process that maybe a little bit of naivety and a lot of guts kind of gets you part of the way. But it was, from going from early prototypes and sort of learning very quickly like what stuff costs and everything that's involved in the whole process, prototypes that you're sort of, we're seeing things for the very first time. I don't really have an understanding of just like the different steps, the EVT, the PVT, the DVT, they're like all of these things, these new acronyms that we were learning. But we had really good partners throughout the whole process, from Michael at Facility and Doris Dev here, which helped us with, figuring out how to get the whole manufacturing thing started. We had a lot of hand holding. The last thing I'll say on this is we come from a perspective, at least in our previous world of brand, or our current and previous world of brand, which is that we know what we're good at and we know what we're not good at. And we recognize that we're going to make an infinitely better product by partnering with people who know what they're doing in each of these individual disciplines. So I think there had been some early discussion around just like, do we try and make this ourselves? Are we going to, figure out how to create a mold? Do we 3D print? Do we do all these other things? But I think the standard that we set for what we knew this could be and what we wanted to release was just too high to really think about going down any of those avenues. So that's where it turned into like this broader, and deeper thing. And yeah, it was an incredible process.
I don't know that we would have done it if we knew all the steps in the like how challenging it is, which is like true of any endeavor I've ever done. Which is like, oh my gosh, if I knew in retrospect like how hard this would have been, it would have deterred you.
Yeah, what was uniquely challenging in that way? Like, what are some examples?
So when we first started, we were looking at like what's the manufacturing like? We knew we wanted to actually try to produce something that was mass, that wasn't like just a beautiful it would have been very easy, so much easier to have made some beautiful handcrafted, very limited thing. And so as we started looking at that, we hit a lot of challenges. The first impulse was like, let's make this domestically, and we're going to try to keep this like really close by. And we ran into a lot of walls with that pretty quickly, especially once we landed on some of the material decisions. So we worked with facility, had our initial idea, had kind of the big idea of like this metal base that's going to go on this first set. And we had some material specification we knew we wanted to work with. So we know we're working with ABS, silicone, this metal in some capacity. And once we start doing that, then we're looking in, kind of reaching out, not able to do manufacturing. Thankfully, facility and our other partner, Doris Dev, there's a lot of engineers involved. And one thing that I think we've learned in this process is, even if something as simple, seemingly simple for us as like a chess set, there's a lot of complexity in terms of like the engineering component. It's just like, oh, hey, once we like actually push fluid into the mold, like I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but it's like just putting things, like we're getting these heat spots here, and like you're seeing these really technical things at the level of sophistication to both like cut the tool for it, the ways in which they're troubleshooting once the tool's cut, and you're like actually testing samples and seeing some of the problems that arise. I personally, I'll speak for myself, would not have known the first thing about how to like really have the conversations at the right level. So to have a few people who are just like hardcore product engineers who really understood material in a way that we didn't, who could kind of troubleshoot all these minor steps along the way. They were just like, it's the physical world and stuff doesn't just perform like you would like a beautiful render. And so making that stuff, I think we felt really grateful that we had these partners there who were kind of like helping walk us through like, hey, it's okay. This is common in so many things that are manufactured, and this is like part of the process. And it's like, okay, we can kind of like calm down. We understand that like these are the decisions, all these little like thousands of decisions you got to make along the way.
Was there custom molding required? I have to assume there was custom molding required.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like? I mean, I feel like that's extremely expensive. Like, what was that decision-making process like to use custom molding? I guess maybe it wasn't even a decision. It was like, this just has to be what it is.
I think that's when we kind of set the vision in place. I think when we landed on the core design of this, and again, it came out of not just like a pure aesthetic, just like, wouldn't metal bases be cool? It's just like, no, like stability is really important in chess. People are playing chess really fast, and the majority of sets do not stand up under the duress of that. They have weighting in it, but it's usually lead that's kind of buried inside. So it's kind of like, again, it's going back to this marriage between like aesthetics and functionality. And once we kind of settled on this, it was just like, no, this makes a lot of sense. Then it was really just like, how do we get this to happen? I think it was kind of like as much as possible a no compromise product. So yes, totally. There was, even when it comes to like the mats themselves, they are molded. There was tooling involved in that. Thankfully, silicon tooling is not as serious as like ABS tooling.
Yep.
And throughout the process of kind of developing the product as well, I think we're probably talking about, there's an individual tool, there's a tool for the silicon insert, there's a tool for the base, which is die cast, but then it's CNC'd because of course we wanted it to be, of a certain standard. The tooling for the ABS pieces was another
like the shell.
the shell on the outside of it was a really significant component.
Yeah.
That was probably the most expensive component out of everything. And it really just came back to this question of just like, I think, we're hoping to do this at a scale that, and again, going back to this idea of just like expression, we see ourselves releasing not just one chess set in one colorway, but we're going to come out with a lot of different colorways. So as long as we can see the sort of long view of, this tool, which is now an asset for us that we can, continue to use, and we are using, and looking forward to releasing new stuff in 2026, I think we just saw it as a, just an upfront cost that we were very unused to paying. But, I think when you actually see the tool itself and, we've seen it with our own eyes, it's just like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. How did you go about financing the project? Was it bootstrapped entirely?
Yeah, so we basically the thesis when we basically sat down, had a little like partners retreat, like what's the next phase of the design business, and it's like I think we want to try to launch this other thing, and we're like the way that this could be somewhat possible is we had a few connections that maybe we get a little bit of funding, but not like venture, nothing massive. And we were like, but if we take brand off the table, we know from experience that it's expensive. And building out our own e-com shop, Shopify site, doing all the marketing, do all this, just all the sweat that we pour into it. We're like, I think kind of as we started to really validate this idea and start running through just like, what would this cost to do? We realized we can basically just hustle as much as we can to kind of do this work and grind it out and actually save quite a bit on this upfront launch, pour as much of that as we can into the tooling, into POs for the initial set of pieces, and try to like just get up and running at scale. So it's kept it definitely a little bit, like we've had to be a little more methodical along the way, just like with the amount of orders. Like we would love to mention like different colorways. We'd love to just launch and have like all the colors in the world and just have, but it's not really possible. We have to sort of be quite meticulous about like, we're going to sell to this point and then we can kind of get the next PO going. So a little bit, but I think we knew we were looking to just build like a sustainable business, not just kind of like some little flashy thing. So we have like this roadmap and a plan, just kind of change some of those. And then we were able, we're still taking on client work too. So we're like, it's kind of a little bit subsidized through the studio, a little bit through this and that, but we have a little bit of seed funding from partner and then just like make it work.
When you first launched, what did the initial demand look like? And did you have enough supply on hand to meet it? It sounds like a fairly expensive product to manufacture. You have what I feel like is a really reasonable price point given the quality of the product. I bring it up because it's like I feel like the initial like minimum order quantities needed to probably be like maybe higher than you were expecting initially, maybe not. Like how did you go about meeting whatever the demand might have been at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we had enough. The initial demand was great. The reception was fantastic.
Yeah.
When we first launched. I will say, it's we come from a brand background, not from a marketing background. So this whole like building the thing and figuring out how to make it communicate what you need it to communicate and for people to feel about it, that was all great. But then it was just like, right, how do we run meta ads? How do we actually get the word out that this thing is actually something that you can buy and it's worth the amount that we say it's worth? This has been a fun challenge for us. So I think, we came out of the gate I think we sort of started teasing it in December of 2024.
Yep.
We actually had landed product in January and started selling. But you're right, the minimum order quantities are kind of way higher than we would really want them to be. Like in an ideal world, we would just be doing much smaller POs of a huge variety of different colorways and all this different stuff to really get out this vision. But that's just not, that doesn't align with the kind of product that we've produced. And so we wanted it to come out of the gate as standing on the same level as so many products, so many contemporary products that we love. And with that comes all this like technology and manufacturing process that is just akin to producing a lot of these things. So I will say that, our partners have been very respectful and very forgiving of the fact that we're so shrimpy and so new to market. And we definitely try to we have a new, product releasing in January, and they've been great at us trying to slice and dice it as much as we can to just get this, variety out there. So that's been great. But as you say, more POs that would be our preference would not have resulted in the product that we brought to market. So it's kind of like learning to swim in a big pond kind of thing. We're wearing the big shoes that don't really fit yet. So in time, and I think as we've gone on throughout the year, we've learned a lot more about how to market our products and how to, scale our advertising and do all of this stuff. So I think, 2025, at least as far as we've been concerned, has just been like the proving ground for the product market fit, just seeing was our thesis correct? Did people actually want this? Is this a hole that's been missing? And I think that's proven to be correct. And I think 2026 is the one where we're like, okay, we semi know what we're doing now. Now we can start to really figure out how to really sort of get this out there properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. You teed up my next question perfectly, which is what have you learned about marketing since kicking this off? And are there any particular channels that you found to be very successful?
Yeah, great question. It turns out that, we haven't been doing a lot of different channels. We've primarily been focused on Meta, largely because it's just the two. It's just the two of us. We don't have some advertising agency. We had a little bit of help at the beginning to set up some initial campaigns that transitioned into, I think, it would be helpful for us to have a better understanding of how these things work and how to get the messaging out there for ourselves. It's nice to be nimble enough to be able to just be like, okay, well, we can create the content, we can create the assets, and we can upload them and we can schedule them. And it just allows us to be a lot more nimble, which I really appreciate. I think we've learned that, some things work a lot better than you would possibly imagine, and other things that you think would be a slam dunk are just less successful. I think not speaking specifically about any one particular piece of content, I think we just learned to, and I don't think this is a novel piece of wisdom for the people listening, but it's just you just have to try a lot of different stuff and kind of figure out what resonates with everyone. As a new brand to market, I was super grateful of all the people who ordered from us at the very beginning with little trust, no reviews, nothing to go on except this looks cool. But there are enough people out there who are just I like supporting small business. I love chess, and so wanted to give it a go. So I think it's really just been a question of kind of building on from that, being very experimental, and with our very limited budget, just kind of trying to really focus until we figure one channel out. I don't think we've really done that yet, but we've certainly been learning as we go.
Yeah, there's been a couple of little things along the way. One nice thing about chess is it is a small little niche subculture of people who are very engaged and active in it. And we are a part of that, kind of knew it, but we're not deep in it. So trying to meet people, become even more part of the community. And I think by and large, it's a great community of people. They're really just thoughtful. It's not too, there's not a lot of trolling, except for when we have a photo and there's a setup of the pieces. There's just some subset of people who are going to analyze that position and then decide that it's really a silly position for white or something. But I think the other thing that was, interesting from my perspective, that I was thinking back on this year is there's some simple things oh, you know what? Why don't we just put a little bit of money into some of the subreddits that are out there? Because there's some pretty big chess subreddits. Just try to build some awareness. Hey, we're out here. And those, that just performed huge. People were because you just have this targeted market, just, oh, wow, we want to check this out. Now, that didn't mean automatically converting, but you're able to then kind of retarget or do some things that felt oh, this is kind of smart. The other thing that I think has been really interesting, we definitely, I will say for myself, a little bit of a if we build it, they will come naivete. That's oh no, there's just a grind, a day, we gotta get the word out every day. And we're so used to handing off stuff at that pivot point to marketing teams, and then they kind of take it and run, and we're good luck. And so all of a sudden be wait, no, we're still holding the baton here and happy to make this work. The other thing I will say, and I think is a good problem, is we knew that we needed this product to slam into this small market and kind of break some people's brains a little bit. And I think that we were seeing that really early on, where people were like, wait, what is this? And you'd have some people on one end that are a little more like traditionalists in chess who were kind of like, I don't know about this. I feel a little uncomfortable. And we actually kind of saw in real time, just through comments and through the way that which people are thinking about it, enough people got it in their hand and like, no, this is the real deal. And you almost just saw the sort of perception online shift pretty quickly from like, hold on a minute, we're not sure, this is new, to like, actually, this is pretty cool. And so that has been really encouraging. And I think at the very, very beginning, I'm talking month 1 or 2, we were kind of going, oh my gosh, there is like a large component of people who just seem to be like resistant just by nature, because they're like, hey, I've always seen chess look this way, and now you're doing something that doesn't look that way. What is it? And so to see it start to shift was like kind of a huge first data point for us that this is maybe working.
Are there any other brands that have successfully done something similar where they're introducing, let's call it a beautiful, functional product in a space that's sort of a legacy space that might be, there might be some like rigidity from those in the community or in the space? Are there any other brands you admire that have done something similar, or any other brands that you admire, I guess, more broadly? But I think this is like a very interesting problem of like, yeah, you're trying to sell to a community that's very deeply rooted in tradition, and so I'm curious, like, yeah, I don't know what you make of that.
Yeah, no, it's a great. I mean, it's a great question. I don't personally have like 3 or 4 brands that fit. I have brands that sit a little bit outside of category, kind of break up what I would consider to be like a bit of a sleepy category, or a category that's not like high innovation. We purposely didn't choose to jump into like canned beverages or like, like food pack, like stuff where there's just constant like new. And I think there was a balance for us of like, we purposefully made the set based on the Staunton style. That's like the style that's used in tournament play. It needed to be like the real thing. We paid so much attention to proportion, to playability, to kind of honor that sense in which this isn't just like little sculptures that we're just making kind of fun decor design. It's like, no. This is really for people who really, really play chess.
Mhm.
And yet it has to feel somehow that new. So we, and we also really wanted it to feel like, even from a product, like for us, brand is everything. So like the product is the brand, and like it has to just like, you look at it and it doesn't look like anything else. And in those categories, all the ones you hear if you talk to anybody who does brand, like the Uggs or the Liquid Deaths of the world, they come in and it's like, it couldn't be mistaken for any other company, because it's like, look at this shoe. It's just like, and it's so outside the norm of like how people think about tennis shoes versus this shoe. It's like this completely other thing. And so we did talk a little bit about trying to land in the market in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yet to be able to back it up, not to be like just novelty, because that doesn't work, but to be able to back it up or underscore it by being like, wait a minute, but they actually paid a lot of attention to like the weight of the pieces, the size, etc.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, or the potential issues with perception that could come along with coming in with brand, is this idea that just like, hey, what is this like corporate play on like the game we love? And I think if that has been one of the interesting like needles to thread for us.
Yeah.
Because we come at this with the best intentions of trying to create a great set for everyone who wants to play it with every day. But we get emails all the time, from people who are, I don't know, looking for some sort of sponsorship or some sort of like a partnership. And then it's just like, well, I didn't actually realize you were just like 2 guys who were just like bumbling through this thing. It's just like, sometimes, maybe we made it look a little too slick at the beginning, because there is this idea that just like, hold on, the man's coming for our like, for our great game. And so that's been something that's taken a little bit of time to communicate, because we kind of came out of nowhere with this big, just like, it's here. We didn't want to start with this little fledgling thing. So that's been an interesting challenge to balance for sure.
How have you thought about distribution? So right now, from my understanding, the product is only available D2C on your website. Are you trying to keep it that way deliberately? Do you want to get into stores? Do you want to set up some sort of distribution channels through clubs and other venues like that? How are you thinking about scaling the distribution as you grow?
Yeah, great question. We basically felt like all we could handle in the first year with the launch and trying to get this up and running was DTC. Like, let's just stay direct. Let's actually try to own that experience and make sure that it's all working. Our 3PL is good, the way that all kind of comes together. and then figure out, especially with the first few like POs, we knew we can package in a way that works really well for direct shipping. And then like we're not thinking about like just boxing and sets. The other goal being that we want all this variety in color, and we basically want people to be able to pick and choose long term. And so we wanted to set that up. But 2026 is kind of independent wholesale blitz. Let's start trying to get it out there. Push. That's one of the big goals. It's like, let's just do more outreach there. The way we've done sort of extended outreach is essentially like through clubs, mostly around the US, some in Europe, and basically like affiliate through sort of clubs. So it's like, hey, we'll give you a set, or if you want, a lot of times people will just buy a set. They're like somebody who runs a club and I think it's cool. They buy one, they want to talk to us. And we're like, hey, if you want to set some stuff up or some information and some portion of this goes to the club to help support the club, like we're trying to set some things there. So it's a very different kind of model. They're not like directly selling, but that ends up being just a huge place where a lot of people are gathering. They see the set each week or each month or whenever the club meets. And it's people who want to play and it's often people who like kind of like this type of set. And so that's worked really well for us as well. We're just like, like just talking and making contact with a ton of clubs. We've done that all year, just like really like making inroads. People have reached out to us. We'll always send a set along or just like have some connection to them, no matter how big or small, really. Like, and there's a bunch here in New York, but that's been one of the coolest things actually, is how many people we've met all over the place that just like are doing some really interesting events and stuff in their city, and just trying to like, connect with them and get stuff to them so that they can kind of like continue the dialogue.
Yeah, I think the demo component for a product, we recognize that, this is not, for many people, this is like an investment set. And we tried our best to keep the price within a kind of reasonable, a reasonable for everyone kind of level. Given how much most people play chess, I think there's a little bit of like realignment there to like thinking about, hold on a minute, I'm spending like $150 on a pair of trainers. Now I'm just needing to recalibrate that towards a chess set. But the pieces and the quality of the board and the thought that's gone into everything kind of has to be felt, it has to be played. So like part of that distribution component is really this kind of like demo component, this ability to feel the product. We get so many of our reviews are just like, wow, it exceeded my expectations. The quality is just so solid in all of these pieces. And I think part of that comes from this like assumption that, again, going back to my previous point about just like building trust as a new business, having people be willing to sort of take a punt on your product. So many times people have just been like pleasantly surprised and just like, wow, this is the real thing. And so for us, part of that component is just gonna be like more clubs, more demo sets out there for people to actually play on and actually recognize, hold on a minute, if I'm dedicating this amount of time to the game, maybe I should be doing it on something a little bit nicer.
And maybe it sounds obvious, but we realized as we saw, like the more people just see it and play with it, the more it does kind of like they're sold.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we got to get these in wholesale. We got to get into physical retail, like really does matter in a lot of ways. So and I think for us, there's a little bit of like, sticking with these kind of independent shops in the same way we think about like these little clubs and restaurants and bars where they're doing these chess nights. It's like the more we can work with real people, small businesses, and kind of get it to them, I think that feels good to us.
I saw that Nymzo was featured in the Strategist gift guide for this season. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
How did that come to be? Is that something you pitched? Did they independently find you? And subsequently, if you can quantify it in any way, like what effect has that had on your business? That sort of product placement in a listicle like that feels really opaque to me. I have no idea how that process works, so I'm really curious how that all went.
Yeah, has been another big learning. Part of why this has been so great, I would say, for all the challenges and sort of stress of starting a business, I feel like Tim and I have learned so much in all these different like adjacent areas. And I think this is a good example, right? We're like reaching out, trying to see, we don't have a PR team, but it's like talk to a few people. We have a big enough networks here in New York. It's like we know some people in PR, maybe they'll be like, oh, you should have already been, pitching to lists. And we did a little bit of that, but really not a lot. so thankful about the strategist thing. It's essentially a friend of a friend I found out played chess, who worked at the strategist, had a connection, and their kid plays chess. And I said, well, we know so and so. Let me just send you a set. No string. This was long ago. This was like this summer. Anytime we're like, oh, we have somebody who's really passionate, or their child is really passionate, like, let's just get you a set to try it out. And she loved it. And so the person who sent it to, like, oh, my kid loves it. Hey, just so you know, I think I might pitch this to the editorial team. Like, oh my gosh, no, it really wasn't the expectation at the time. It's just like, hey, we know that you're into this. I want you to check it out. You're somebody who looks at a lot of product. And I think for us, it felt really great that it was the end of year guides, like the print guide, which is the one that's not really like affiliate driven or kind of online, but just the sort of like highlighting product. So it was like a total surprise and kind of amazing and shocking. And I think like it wasn't, the lists are overwhelming. It's certainly like everything. The holidays hit the right, benchmarks that we're looking for. Everything went up in a major way, and I think that was at the very beginning of that kind of like that curve going upward, which felt amazing. But I also, almost more than anything else, it felt like yet another really huge validator. And we actually even had people sort of coming out of the woodwork that we maybe had sort of preliminary talks with, kind of being like, oh, hey, I saw this, like, this is legit. Some people who never saw us set, didn't really know who we were, who kind of like, we've seen in a very short amount of time how quickly it was just like, this has suddenly pushed us into a different sort of tier of like legitimacy. And it's like sort of being established in a new way. And I think it's like kind of hard to quantify in direct conversion or anything, but it has felt like pretty incredible in that regard.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we recognize throughout the year is that we have many different kinds of buyer types. Some people will see an ad immediately and make a purchase. Other people have been deliberating for months.
Yeah.
And it's only, we've got a really limited window through Meta of understanding, what the click, when someone did their first click and whether they convert. And so whether or not it was an ad that did it. A lot of people are way outside that window, and it's only towards the very end of this year that we've recognized that, like, hold on a minute, I think we need a little bit more of a clear lens on that. So moving into like a better understanding of how to track all of our conversions has been really important. We've certainly noticed a lot of traffic to the website directly from the strategist, which has been really helpful. But the question is just like, for how many people, was that the final thing that sent them over the hill?
Yeah.
And it continues to be like one of the big challenges for 2026 of just like, what is the process within our funnel that really gets people pushed down it? And, many times, we've learned it's through playing a game with someone else who's got a set. And, I have all these great chats on Instagram, like Instant Messenger, with people who are just like, hey, prepare for a load of messages down from a lot of orders from Florida. That's me, by the way. I should be earning a commission. I'm just like, sure, man. we can figure it out. But I think it's hard to quantify, but I think we've recognized that with most of these things, every little improvement, every little thing we get just like adds a % here or adds a few %. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's such an interesting problem. I have a background in B2B tech marketing, and the attribution digitally is just like far easier than something like this, where you've got a combination of some sort of digital attribution that you could quantify, and then, something like a massive placement in a listicle in combination with demoing in person, where it's really difficult to quantify.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting position to be in. I think that we have time for one more question. Where do you see Nymzo going 3 to 5 years from now? It's been a very successful launch. Is this just a chess brand forever? Do you think about venturing into other games? How do you see scaling from here?
We have been pretty adamant, at least for right now, it is a chess brand. We want to be the chess brand if we can be. That's physical product. As much as we can, kind of like take on that space, own that space, work in that way. We want to make many more chess sets up and down the level, working on stuff that's at a cheaper price point, that, it's things that are even like, a finer material or finer chess set. I think for us, one of the like big touchstones, you kind of asked this earlier, but one thing we did reference a lot is we're thinking about like skateboard brands. and how you build out a deck that's kind of your own. So you buy the deck, buy the trucks, wheels, and all different things, and configure it the way that you want it, and the self-expressive component. So for us, the absolute critical thing, and everything that's coming in 2026 is self-expression. So whether you want to start with a lower tier set in all these different colorways, being able to mix and match new ways that this stuff combines, finding like, oh, I want this color mat with this color pieces or whatever it is. Like, we're trying to create that variety so that people feel like it's something they can really own, and it feels a little bit self-expressive, a little bit of their personality. So that is where we are focused in the short term. And then I think for us, it's also that kind of variety of set. Like, we really love the series 1. We're working on a second series, but there's just other things that we can be doing around like higher end sets that are more home decor based, that just feel like kind of, definitive, or things that are working in other ways. So for us, I see it as scale, variety of product, sort of product extension, and just trying to like continue to like make something for like everybody who plays chess. It's like, oh, this is the one I would really want it to be. What do you think though?
Yeah, no, I think the variety is key. And with that, as we've discussed with MOQs, it's all about scale and just making sure that we can get to that kind of a level. I think we made a decision from the very beginning. We wanted to be a staunchly analog brand. Yeah. There's a lot of, you can play chess on your phone. That's great. There are a lot of companies out there, more contemporary companies, who are, infusing their boards with AI, and there's robots and the pieces move and all this stuff. We don't really have any interest in doing that kind of stuff. I think it's really just about the community aspect, the social aspect. So on that, we'd like to be doing a lot more with clubs. We'd like to be doing a lot more getting out there in the community of chess players. So I think seeing us sort of reaching outside of our sort of like insular product world into something a bit more collaborative. I think, again, we know the limits of our, like, we're not great at putting on events. So we like, doing stuff with the clubs. So expect to see a lot more of that. And then, as we discussed, it's like really just about, those independent retailers scaling from there. And the other big component of this is international, because, chess is like hugely international. There are massive markets out there. Too bad at the moment we've developed a product that's incredibly heavy, because that's what all chess players want. So international shipping at the moment is a little bit painful. But I think we would like to figure out how to sort of crack the nut of, reaching out to some of these broader markets, and just sort of go on from there. But I think there's so much to be done. There's so many ideas that we still have, and that we really just want to follow through on, that I can see us filling the next 3 to 5 years easily with that.
Yeah, the skateboard deck analogy is like the perfect analogy. I can't wait to fill out my set. Thank you both so much. This was awesome. I learned so much. If you want to share with listeners where they can find Nymzo, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, you can go to our website, nymzo.world. We're also on Instagram is our primary channel, and that's at nymzoworld. And that's send us a DM. We love to see photos of people playing with their sets. Yeah. We love to see photos of people who've like made their own sets as well. We get a lot of people, sending us stuff that they've been working on and everything. So just like reach out, say hi, and just follow along with what we're doing would be great.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
Josh. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.